Madam President.
Senator from Wisconsin.
The reserve remaining time, which is about 4 minutes.
Madam President, let me
Senator
agree
from
with
Wisconsin.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me agree with the Chair that it is important that we clarify what these amendments do and don't do, not only for purposes of our voting on the amendment, but for any court consideration of this. And this is where the arguments of the Chairman and the Ranking Member really do not relate, in many cases, to the amendment that's been put forward. Senator Bond just made the argument that my amendment differs from the use limit provisions for emergency surveillance because it would allow limits on the use of information about foreign targets. But that's just not true. That's not the amendment I offered. My amendment only puts limits on information about U.S. persons. The government can always use information about foreign persons. And with regard to the comments of the Chair of the committee, the issue only comes up, Madam President, if the government starts its targeting procedures before it gets court approval and then fails to keep track of what it is collecting during that time. And it only comes up if the government procedures are targeting Americans in the United States, in which case I think there are overwhelming policy and constitutional reasons why this information needs to be retrieved and deleted. If the intelligence community is really concerned about this potential burden, it can do what it has said it already does with information gathered using the PAA, and that is to label it. Then it shouldn't have any problem finding it later on. It shouldn't be cumbersome. I mean, the result of the arguments of the Chairman and the Ranking Member is, you know, we've set up rules for the government doesn't follow the rules, and there's simply no consequence at all. It has no teeth. There's no incentive for the government to follow the rules. Moreover, the government can always use information, even about U.S. persons, if it indicates a threat of death and serious bodily harm. And the FISA court can allow the government to use only any information, if the government fixes the defective procedures. And here, I'm very troubled by the arguments of the Senator from Missouri. He says, you won't even allow the government to fix the problem. Well, that's just absolutely false. I mean, I specifically stated that the government is given an opportunity to fix the problem. During those 30 days, it can continue to use the information. If it fixes the problem, it can continue to use the information. The notion that somehow the government should get a complete free pass and have no consequence whatsoever means that these oversight and these restrictions by the FISA court have no meaning. It simply allows them to go and intrude on the private conversations of Americans with no consequence. This is a very modest series of provisions that gives the court and the government tremendous flexibility, and in the end, even with a reasonable effort on the part of the government to comply with the concerns the court has, there will be no disruption of the information they need, and of course none is intended. I reserve the balance of my time.
Madam President.
Senator from West Virginia.
Madam President, just in one short 2 sentences, thousands of targets in the Senator's amendment, thousands of targets, all foreign, means hundreds or thousands of pieces of intelligence. Intelligence doesn't come as one lump. It's an enormous array of collection of all kinds of things which are stitched together over time. All that intelligence could be lost under the Feingold Amendment if there were only U.S. person information that was involved. I yield the floor.
President.
Senator from Wisconsin.
In response to the Senator from West Virginia, it's true that these use limits would apply to any information about U.S. persons other than information indicating a threat of death or bodily harm gathered under unlawful procedures. That's why the amendment provides significantly more flexibility to the government than the use limits for emergency surveillance, in fact. The FISA court can allow the government to use even information about U.S. persons as long as the government corrects the procedures. Now, that's a huge exception that's not present in the emergency.
If the Senator would suspend, we are operating under a previous order for 5:20. Under the previous order, the time until 5:30 is to be divided between the two leaders or their designees.